Hey there! Want to spend less time pulling weeds? Check out Soil Shield by Modern Grower. It's the pre-cut landscape fabric solution to help you drastically reduce weed pressure. Just roll it out, staple it down, and plant. Then let it do the work for you. Say goodbye to endless weeding and hello to more free time. Plus, it's high quality, durable, and will last for years, saving you time and money in the long run. It's available in a variety of row and hole spacings to accommodate all the crops that vegetable farmers grow. Learn more about Soil Shield landscape fabric at shop.moderngrower.co or using the link below. And again, thinking with probably another one with no great answer, if you're growing microgreens, what's the best way, in your opinion, or how would you approach trying to make the best choice for that seed purchase? Is it local? Hearing you, I'm thinking maybe even the local suppliers can't provide enough in terms of quantity. Is it buying organic? How would you approach that if you were running the operation?
Okay, I want to step back to the previous question, which kind of ties into this. Helped the grower grow a beet seed crop last year. It was probably about 1/4 of an acre, which is small on the relative scale of seed production, but pretty big for a local producer. We did this big day of processing seed. So we're trying to separate the seed from the chaff and to get that seed into planting condition. And during that process, you get a big range in seed size. And so when it comes down to it and you want to market that seed, you basically want to be able to grade that seed into different sizes. And you could argue that bigger seed is better, but it's not necessarily better because bigger seed, there's less bigger seed. So it's hard to get a high volume of consistently big seed. So your biggest seed gets filtered out of your seed source. You've got a few different uniform sizes in the middle size range, and that's going to be probably split up into groups and then marketed. So all the seed is consistent. So when you're using a seeder, each seed fits into that seeding wheel as it should. And then you're going to have your smaller seed, which is just too small to market for your market, but it's probably still viable seed and it's pretty good. So you've got this bigger seed, too big, and this little seed, too little, and you may use that on your farm or not. But the reality is that might actually just be waste seed. The smaller seed probably is just getting blown away with the chaff. And what we did in that case was that grower said, well, you've got all this little seed. It's obviously too small, but I'm just going to go plant it out as microgreens in a field. Whatever comes up, and I'm going to use that. So when we think about the world market with sunflower, we're probably seeing something similar. This is the size of seed that we find is really good for processing. This is a size that's really good for this. And there's this other size that's good quality, but doesn't really work. And the volume of that seed in our lot is really about what the microgreens market needs. Sometimes it's short and sometimes it's extra maybe, but it might be that it is segregated out of a range of seed sizes that's going to work better for that. Goes back to we on a grand scale, we try to make use of all our resources, as wasteful as we are, because waste has a cost to it as well, not just ecological, but economic. And so if we can sell that waste product and it can be put to good use elsewhere, then that's a very good end use. So I have no doubt that's going to be the case with some of the microgreen seed that's on the market. And some of the microgreen seed on the market may be just as good as the oil seed or the planting seed or whatever. It's all consistent. There's a huge volume of seed and it can provide everybody's needs. So there's going to be a range depending on the crop and on the season.
Let's take you back to full-on running food peddlers growing microgreens. You want to make the best seed choice possible to support somebody local or to make the most sustainable seed choice. How can somebody doing a microgreen operation go about this? It doesn't sound like the local producers are going to have enough. So does that mean you go with something organic, thinking, okay, the practice is better, even if it might be from a larger company? How would you approach this beyond the example that you just had of working directly with a local grower with stuff that you're using a lot of?
So this is something we do. Yeah. So what you have, to break it down a little bit, is you've got your values. And when you think about food production, you're going to have a value about local, and you're going to have a value about organic. You're going to have a value about quality, and you're also going to have a value about yield. I could buy maybe local seed, but maybe it's not going to perform as well, or maybe it is. So you've got to look at all those values, and I want to find a source that's going to meet the most. If I put each of those values on a scale of 1 to 10, the seed source that's going to do the best to meet the highest level of needs in each of those values. While yield is important, yield is something that we will compromise in order to get a more ethical seed source, as long as the yield is sufficient. Because yield has to be sufficient enough to run a business to justify buying seeds in the first place. We're Canadian based. One of our values is a Canadian source of seeds, and ideally we want Canadian grown seed. Our supplier is Canadian. We've worked with them for a long time, and that's great. When we go to buy seed, it's one of the questions I ask: where is this seed from? All our pea seed comes from Canada, almost always. The buckwheat we use usually comes from Canada, but other seeds, it varies. Sunflower, which I always use as an example, comes from Canada, the US, Israel sometimes. I think we've had it from one other place, like Italy as well. And so we go through this process of assessing our values there. Our priority is Canadian seed. One of our other priorities is clean, like well-cleaned seed. And the Canadian seed we get often has more chaff and more sticks and more broken seeds in it, which isn't ideal for us, because generally that extra debris lays on the soil surface when you're growing and can really increase the risk of surface disease. We don't experience that with that seed. And so even though that's a value, because we don't experience that, we set that aside to go with the Canadian seed. And we buy as much of that Canadian seed as we can store and as we can afford, because we know we don't always get it. And so we put extra effort into that. We're often balancing our values off each other. If I look at Italian seed, it comes from far away. And I know from experience that when we get Italian seed, it's not uniform in size. And so we don't get uniform growth. And so when we're harvesting, sometimes a microgreen is 4 inches tall, and sometimes it's 2 inches tall within the same tray. And so, it's not local and it's not consistent enough. It's organic, which is great. That's a value that's required by our operation. Everything has to be organic. So that gets taken out of the picture. So then we go to those other things. So yeah, that local, in terms of where it's coming from, in terms of the ecology and the transport, as well as where our money is going, comes into that. And then we would go, if we haven't been able to get something from Mums, my second source is High Mowing, because it's a company, sure, they're US based, but I think my money going to the US is better than it going overseas. And it's going to a company that's built on a set of values that continues to demonstrate those values. I feel that is a good sort of second place for my seed to go. We have a company here based in BC that also does microgreen seed, but generally they don't have the volume. Their pricing doesn't work for us. They're not doing any breeding. Everything from their stuff is on the open market. I don't know information about it. So they're a third choice, and it's good. They're high on the local value, but on the cost and on other things, they're lower. So there is hierarchy, and that can change arbitrarily.
Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Grower. Modern Grower is your source for time and labor-saving farm tools, such as the Paper Pot Transplanter, Quick Click Seeder, and the Jang Direct Seeder. Turn laborsome tasks into free time with tools by Modern Grower.